Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the tangled arms of a rainforest where everything feels a little damp. The air tastes like green leaves, and the only numbers anyone cares about are scratched into stone and whispered by candlelight. You're surrounded by the hum of insects, the occasional squawk of something with wings and attitude, and the gentle rhythm of drums echoing from deeper within the trees. You probably won't survive this, by the way. This isn't just math, it's ancient math. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and the current time. I always love seeing who's snoozing with me around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward through the underbrush, brushing away vines, and trying not to think too hard about that rustle behind you. Up ahead, stone pyramids rise from the forest like sleeping giants. The Maya built them centuries ago, some say millennia. And you? You've been invited to learn their secrets. Not the kind with gold and curses, but something sneakier. Math. Yes, you've been summoned to do math in your dreams. Welcome. Your guide, a calm older scribe with cheeks painted red and a very judgmental parrot, leads you toward a clearing. There, on a worn stone table, lies a pile of flat wooden tablets. No iPads here. These are carved with rows of dots and bars. 1 dot equals 1. A bar equals 5. You're counting in base 20 now, baby. That's fingers and toes. Better hope you're not wearing shoes. He hands you a tablet and gestures. Count. So, like a nervous contestant on a reality show for accountants, you begin tapping the dots aloud. 1, 2, 3. Then a bar. That's 5. Combine them. Dot dot bar. That's 7. He nods. You're either correct or amusing him. Hard to tell. Here, in the jungle, math doesn't live in notebooks. It's chiseled into temples, drawn onto bark paper codices, and woven into the very fabric of daily life. You know how we sometimes forget what day it is? The Maya did not. Every day had a name, a number, a destiny, and it was your job to remember them all. You stroll past a group of kids learning to count pebbles and corn kernels. Their little fingers fly over the counting mats like tiny abacuses. You feel both impressed and slightly ashamed. You, with your fancy digital clock that still somehow makes you late to everything. Nearby, a priest stands chanting dates. He's not checking his planner. He's aligning today's events with a calendar more complex than your last tax return. It's a ritual performance, but make no mistake, this is serious math theater. The kind that once determined when to plant corn, when to wage war, and when to throw a party so epic it needed human sacrifices. You know, normal scheduling stuff. Mainstream history tells us the Maya developed their numerical system as early as the 1st century BCE. That's more than 2,000 years ago. But unlike other ancient systems, theirs included 0, something most other civilizations didn't bother with for a long time. You'll get better acquainted with 0 soon, and trust me, it's weirder than it sounds. There's something almost hypnotic about this number system. It's not just arithmetic, it's art. Each set of dots and bars is stacked vertically, each level a new power of 20. It's like a sleepy little number ladder. Want to write 63? That's 3 dots over. 2 bars over 3 dots. It's math, but with personality. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly invented zero on their own, or whether the concept trickled in from contact with South American cultures. Either way, the version they used, represented by a simple shell symbol, was elegant and powerful. But you don't know that yet. For now, you're still learning to love the dots. You settle into the rhythm of the jungle classroom. The air buzzes gently. Somewhere nearby, a howler monkey shouts like a tired gym teacher. You focus on the warm stone beneath your fingers, on the smooth grooves carved by centuries of practice. You're not just doing math. You're joining a lineage of thinkers who counted in harmony with the stars, the moon, and the seasons. One of the scribes hands you a bowl of atole, warm corn drink with a texture that can only be described as mildly confusing. You sip it anyway. Calories are calories. He points to a nearby stone stele. You squint and recognize those same numbers again, but bigger, etched permanently beside a depiction of a king. This is how they commemorated royal events. Not with tweets, but with math. You wander farther, past statues and staircases, every surface subtly tattooed with code. It's like walking through a spreadsheet sculpted by poets. You run your fingers over the carvings, feeling the steady repetition of dots and bars. The longer you look, the more patterns you begin to see, like staring at a screensaver and finally seeing the dolphin. As the sun dips behind the trees, fireflies begin to drift into the clearing. You feel your breathing slow. The scribes are still working, heads bent, murmuring softly as they calculate the next ceremonial date. You lie back on the warm ground, letting the symbols dance across your eyelids, and somewhere deep in your dream brain, a realization begins to form. These people didn't just do math. They lived it. Their calendars told them not just when things happened, but why. Numbers weren't abstract. They were sacred, dangerous, even romantic. You sigh, your limbs heavy with humidity and meaning. You never thought you'd feel sleepy about math, but here you are, sinking into a numerical lullaby, held in the arms of a civilization that saw the infinite in 3 dots and a bar. You wake up, or maybe you never really fell asleep, still in the clearing, still surrounded by warm stone, soft moss, and the low rumble of jungle life. The morning mist curls around your ankles like it's trying to teach you a new number. System. And in a way, it is. A young apprentice nudges you up with the same energy someone uses to reboot an old laptop. He hands you a tablet etched with more symbols, more dots and bars, stacked into tidy little vertical columns. But this time, there's something different. At the bottom of one of the stacks is a tiny symbol, an empty shell, a 0. It's weirdly elegant. No flashing neon signs, no dramatic, "Look, we invented nothing," fanfare. Just a quiet, curled shape that says, "Yep, this number doesn't exist. You're looking at nothing." That little shell, it turns out, is one of the most radical things to ever emerge from a jungle civilization. The Mayans weren't the first to stumble upon 0. Babylonians had placeholder nothings, and Indian mathematicians would later refine the concept. But the Maya were the first in the Western Hemisphere to use it systematically. And they weren't shy about it either. They loved 0. They made it sacred. They made it. In their world, the absence of something had just as much power as its presence. You sit down cross-legged beside the apprentice, who's now diligently explaining things in a calm, sleepy voice. He points to a vertical row. 3 dots on top. 1 shell on the bottom. That means 60. Why? Because the Maya counted in base 20, and the shell sits in the ones place. It's nothing, so you've got 3 20s and 0 ones. Voila, 60. It's like Sudoku, but for astronomer priests with excellent posture. You try another one. 2 dots over 2 bars, over 1 shell again. That's 70. You're catching on, even if your brain's starting to feel like soft tamal. Filling. The trick is to read the positions. The bottom level is the ones. The next up, that's 20s, then 400s. And yes, 8,000s above that, if you're really ambitious or just incredibly bored. The Mayan system made multiplication and large. Calculations surprisingly efficient, if you were trained for it. For everyone else, it was like trying to solve algebra while dodging mosquitoes the size of dinner plates. But here's the real kicker. They didn't use numbers just to tally crops or count people. No, these symbols were part of a spiritual language. They wrote birth dates in math. They etched the lifespans of kings into temple walls using this system. They calculated the positions of stars, the cycles of Venus, the ideal time to build a new altar or, have a good old ritual sacrifice. Historians still argue whether the Maya fully grasped zero as a true abstract concept the way modern mathematicians do, or whether they saw it more as a placeholder within a calendar. Either way, their comfort with the void, the idea of representing nothing with something, was revolutionary. The apprentice hands you a stylus made of jaguar bone. Fancy. He guides your hand as you scratch the symbols into soft bark paper. You're writing the date of your arrival here. 0 in the ones, 5 bars in the 20s, 2 dots in the 400s. It's your timestamp now. A sleepy footprint in math. Behind you, one of the elder scribes chuckles. He tells you, through a translator, parrot. Because, of course, that people today still struggle with understanding the power of zero. In your world, 0 is a number you dread seeing in your bank account. In his, it's the divine silence between heartbeats, the sacred pause before a king is crowned. The parrot translates this as, 0 is where the party starts. Not wrong. You glance around. There are no clocks, no phones, no ticking. Time here is circular, measured not in seconds, but in cycles, days, weeks, sacred months, and baktuns. A baktun, by the way, is 144,000 days long. That's roughly 394 years. That's how long these people were thinking ahead. You can't even commit to a Netflix show past season 2. They didn't fear large numbers. They embraced them. They needed them. Their rituals, predictions, and histories demanded big math. And you start to see how 0 wasn't an afterthought. It was the foundation. A tiny shell, marking a moment of nothing, holding the structure of everything. There's a carving on a nearby wall. You step up to it and see a sequence of numbers, dots, bars, and a shell. The date? December 21st, 2012. The infamous end of the world prediction. You smile sleepily. The world didn't end, but it did mark the end of a major cycle in the Mayan calendar, a baktun reset, like rolling the odometer on the universe. And it involved a lot of zeros. You sit beside the wall, letting your fingers trace the numbers. The cool stone hums faintly beneath your palm. Everything in the jungle is alive, even the math. A jaguar slinks past in the shadows, uninterested in your existential crisis about zero. You're just one dot in a very large number. The apprentice stretches beside you and hands you a small stone, with a shell carved into it. A keepsake. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing is nothing at all. And now, as twilight deepens, the dots on your tablet begin to blur. Your eyelids drift, your thoughts loop, and all you can think about is the elegance of emptiness. You dream of shells floating on an endless sea of numbers, carried by soft waves of silence. You wake, or at least you think you do, staring up at a night sky so thick with stars, it looks like someone spilled sugar on black velvet. The jungle sleeps around you, but the temples are wide awake. Moonlight gleams off the stone, and in that silver glow, you notice a figure crouched near the base of a staircase, carefully brushing soil away from something half buried. Curious and slightly unnerved, that dream. You seem so easily drawn to mysterious midnight digging. You wonder.
Over!
The figure, another scribe, this one with hands like tree roots and hair woven into tight coils, nods to you. He gestures at the unearthed object, a small white shell, gleaming softly like a dropped pearl. Another one, another zero. But this shell wasn't randomly lost or accidentally buried. It was placed deliberately beneath a layer of stone, under the floor of what was once a temple. And that's the kind of thing that historians are still arguing about. Was it symbolic? Functional? Did they bury zeros as offerings, anchors? Or was it their way of literally building their mathematics into the world? Whatever the case, you realize the Maya didn't just use numbers, they embedded them. They carved them into lintels and stairs. They painted them on ceramics and in codices. And sometimes they hid them, like tiny math Easter eggs beneath sacred buildings. The old scribe taps the shell thoughtfully, as if listening for an answer it's been keeping quiet for centuries. Then he starts to hum, a soft, rhythmic sound. You lean in and realize he's chanting numbers. Not aloud, but as if summoning their shapes with his breath. You sit beside him, drawn into the lull of his counting. It's different this time. Not the dot-dot bar mechanics you've learned, but something more like poetry. Numbers that tell a story. He points to the shell again. In the Mayan system, the shell isn't just zero, it's completion, a full breath, a quiet moment between eras. When a calendar cycle ends, it returns to zero. The world doesn't stop, it begins again. You let that thought settle into your bones. The idea that zero isn't the end, but a doorway, above you, carved into the base of the temple, is another sequence. The scribe gestures for you to read it. You squint. Dot dot. Bar bar. Shell. You mouth the translation. 40. He nods, then points higher, where the numbers continue upward like a stone spiral. Each set of numbers climbing with you as your eyes trace the temple. You realize the architecture itself is telling you a story. The steps of the pyramid are mapped with numbers. Some count days. Some mark the reign of kings. Some align with the A movements of stars. And all of them, every single number, relies on the shell, the humble zero beneath it all. You follow the stairs upward, slowly, dreamily. Each step makes a soft sound under your feet, like walking across memory. And every so often, there's a groove in the stone where a shell was once placed, or maybe still is, hidden just beneath the surface. Your fingers brush over them. You wonder who last touched these. Another scribe? A priest? A sleepy apprentice? Like you, just trying to keep the count straight? Not all Mayan cities buried shells beneath their temples. Some only used them in writing. Others made them part of public rituals. Historians still debate whether these were regional practices or if they evolved over time with spiritual shifts. But whatever the case, one thing is clear. The Maya didn't treat math like a cold science. They treated it like breath, blood, ritual. The jungle breeze catches your hair. You reach the top of the pyramid, and there, laid out before you like a quilt, are dozens more structures, more temples, more homes, more counting places. The entire city, quiet and still beneath the stars, is a map of numbers. You can't unsee it now. The grid-like layout, the distances between buildings, the number of doors, steps, rooms. Everything here is mathematically intentional. A kind of sacred urban planning that would give your local zoning board a heart attack. And nestled within it all, more shells. Not just symbols on tablets, but real shells, tucked into corners, embedded in mortar, used in jewelry, and placed into the hands of statues. Like each one whispers, something has ended, something else begins. One temple in particular draws your eye. It's half collapsed, vines curling around its bones, but you're drawn to it. Inside, the walls are covered in red pigment and soot. Someone once used this space to calculate the length of Venus's cycle, 584 days, in case you're counting. And yes, they used shells and dots to track it. You sit down in what's left of the doorway, your legs dangling over a centuries-old threshold. Somewhere nearby, a frog belches a low note, and a bat flutters overhead like a smudged thought, and you start to wonder, what did it feel like to be a Mayan mathematician? To wake each day not to alarms, but to cycles. To walk through buildings shaped by equations. To believe, deep in your bones, that zero was sacred. Maybe you'd feel smaller, or maybe more connected. You run your finger through the dusty floor, drawing a shell shape into the dirt. For a second it glows, but maybe that's just your imagination. You lie back once again. The jungle breathes around you. The numbers you've seen, dots, bars, and shells, float gently behind your eyelids. They don't shout. They don't demand. They simply are, and they've been waiting 1,000 years for someone to understand them. You're not sure how much time has passed. The stars have shifted, and the air is thick with the scent of wet stone and blooming night flowers. Somewhere in the trees, a howler monkey calls out, a sound that's equal parts majestic and deeply unsettling. But here atop this temple of numbers, you feel oddly at peace. You're beginning to see the world not as a blur of noise and deadlines, but as a quiet, deliberate sequence of dots, bars, and shells. Below you, in the heart of the city, something catches your eye. A soft glow. A circle of people, scribes, astronomers, children, gathered around what looks like a giant stone disk. Curiosity tugs at you like a vine around your ankle. You make your way down, step by step, feet brushing against the etched numbers you now read instinctively. 20, 100, 400, 0. The disk turns out to be a calendar. Not the kind you stick to your fridge, but something vast and sacred, the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ceremonial calendar used for rituals, naming, and, you guessed it, math. The Tzolk'in is made up of 20-day names combined with 13 numbers, cycling endlessly. Every day has a name and a number, like waking up and being told, Happy Forbeen, or Blessed 12-week. It sounds absurd, until you realize it gave every day a personality, a vibe, a purpose. You didn't just schedule your dentist appointment. You consulted the calendar to make sure it wasn't on a cursed day named for wind gods and cranky corn spirits. A child steps forward and lays a shell on the disc. Today, it seems, is a 0 day. A day between cycles. A pause in the cosmic breathing. The elders murmur approvingly. You sit down, cross-legged, as an older woman begins to explain, in that dreamy, sing-song tone you've grown to love, that the Tzolk'in wasn't just for picking good wedding dates. It was also a decoder ring for time itself. The Maya believed that every event, every ceremony, every disaster and victory was part of a repeating cosmic pattern. And those patterns? Mapped with dots, bars, and shells. You try to imagine this rhythm. A world where the days loop like a spiral staircase, where numbers carry not just weight, but meaning. A 1 isn't just a unit, it's a tone, a beat, in a drumline older than civilization. And here's the kicker. The Tzolk'in isn't even the only calendar the Maya used. Oh no, they were overachievers. Alongside the 260-day cycle, they ran the Hob, a 365-day solar calendar, more like what you're used to. But even that wasn't enough. So naturally, they combined the two. Because when you're a society obsessed with time and math, you don't stop at one system. The combination of the Tzolk'in and the Hob creates a massive cycle called the calendar round, 18,980 unique day combinations before the pattern repeats. That's about 52 solar years, which, coincidentally, is about how long it feels when you're stuck on hold with customer service. The Maya knew this. They tracked it all. And when the calendar round reset, yep, more zeros, more shells, more sacred pauses between cosmic movements. Historians still debate how precisely the Maya aligned their calendar with the solar year. Some claim their calculations drifted slightly over time. Others argue they made subtle adjustments we haven't fully understood. But no one questions their dedication. These people didn't just keep time, they lived in it. You look around at the people gathered at the calendar stone. They're not just scholars, they're believers. For them, math isn't cold. It's not about taxes or spreadsheets. It's about connection. It's about knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to build, when to mourn, and most importantly, when to rest. You watch as another child carefully moves a small shell on the stone, advancing the calendar forward by one sacred breath. It's bedtime math, you realize. Not equations to solve, but rhythms to sleep by. The woman beside you, eyes, cloudy but bright, leans in and tells you that certain days were believed to carry more power than others. Days of prophecy, days to avoid travel, days when the gods were most watchful or most irritable. And it was all written in the dots and bars. You wonder what day you were born on, in the Tzolk'in. Maybe 9 Khan, the day of maize and rebirth. Or 3 Chichen, sacred to the serpent. You'd probably hope it wasn't something like 1 Kimi, the day of death. Though, let's be honest, it sounds kind of metal. The scribe gestures for you to place a shell of your own. You do, gently. It clicks into the groove on the stone, perfectly smooth and oddly satisfying. Another 0. Another heartbeat in the cosmic drum. You begin to notice other discs, other patterns. Stones carved with concentric circles, panels of bark paper with intricate rows of symbols. This isn't just a calendar, it's a world view. The Maya saw the universe as a sequence of nested wheels, turning endlessly, clicking into place with elegant inevitability. And you, standing here with bare feet and tired eyes, have become a tiny cog in that machine, a bar, a dot, a shell. The wind stirs the trees. The fireflies begin their nightly flicker, like the stars practicing their choreography. Someone begins a low chant, counting off the days, each number soft and round in your ears. You lean back against the calendar stone, your shell resting where it belongs. The numbers swirl behind your eyelids once again, not demanding, not urgent, but gentle, like a lullaby made of time. You don't quite remember drifting off, but when you wake, it's to the sound of rustling paper. Not the crinkly, modern kind, but the soft whisper of something ancient, fibrous, textured, almost alive. You blink, and you're inside a dim room. The walls are smooth and close, painted with glyphs, and in front of you sits a figure hunched over a long strip of folded bark paper. It's a codex, a real Mayan codex, not a replica in a museum, not a scan on a laptop screen, but the real deal, one of the few that survived the colonial purge, though here in your dream space, it still lives in its original time. You can smell it, a mix of resin, ash, and old jungle. The scribe looks up at you briefly, nods, and continues. His brush is made from animal hair, and the black ink he dips into was once soot mixed with plant oil. Line after line, symbol after symbol, he paints numbers into the page, dots, bars, shells, all in red and black, colors of life and death. You move closer. The codex unfolds like an accordion, revealing calendar tables, star charts, ceremonial schedules, and throughout it, the familiar language of the Mayan numerical system dances. Some of the numbers sit atop glyphs of gods with jaguar pelts and twisted grins. Others align with eclipses, rain forecasts, and corn rituals. One line catches your eye, a series of digits descending in a perfect arc, a 13, a 12, an 11, then a shell. Then it starts again at 13. It's a countdown, but not to nothing, to something new, something cyclical. Another reset. Another loop in the Mayan understanding of time. The scribe mutters something, more to himself than to you, and you lean in. The calendar does not end, he says in a thick, lilting cadence. It turns. You smile. Yeah, okay. You've heard this before. The infamous 2012 doomsday misinterpretation. It's almost funny now, how the modern world panicked over what the Maya considered a spiritual refresh, like flipping to a new notebook or switching playlists. Historians still argue whether the 13th Baktun, the great cycle that reset in 2012, was a purely mathematical event or also a religious one. Did they expect the gods to show up, or just another Tuesday with better coffee? You look back at the codex. Each number is so carefully written, with such reverence. These weren't just scribbles, they were sacred. Each page a whisper to the gods, or maybe to time itself. The scribe hands you a brush, his eyes twinkling. You hesitate, then dip it in ink. You make a single mark, a shell. And for the first time, you feel the sheer weight of what that symbol means. It's not an absence. It's a breath, a preparation, a soft hum before the next note. The codex glows softly, as if pleased with your contribution. You glance at the walls. More numbers, more calendars, more symbols of death and corn, and rain and fire. It hits you. The Maya wrote math everywhere. On temple walls, on stelae, on ceramic bowls, even on bones. They lived inside their numbers, like a language you dream in. And while only 4 codices are known to survive in the modern world, the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier, you suspect there were once hundreds, thousands. Entire libraries of folded bark paper, destroyed in one colonial bonfire or another. The thought is enough to make you grip your imaginary brush a little tighter. A flicker of sadness passes through the room. The scribe pauses. For a moment you both listen to the silence that only lost knowledge can make. Then he speaks again. The gods don't care if you remember their names, but they do care that you keep counting. You blink. Did he just quote a cosmic deity? You glance back at the codex and notice something strange. Some numbers are out of order. Not mistakes, but intentional rearrangements, like puzzles, like riddles. Some pages contain patterns that loop or reflect themselves. Others follow star paths. Still others mimic musical timing. There's an entire field of study dedicated to deciphering these sequences, and even now scholars still debate the meanings. Were these math games? Astrological tools? Ritual blueprints? Did the scribes hide messages for future mathematicians to decode? You get the feeling you're not meant to solve them all. Maybe you're just meant to appreciate their rhythm. Outside, the room, you hear the low thud of a drum. Night has fallen again, or maybe it never ended. Time feels unmoored, like you're floating in a warm pool of arithmetic. You rise, leaving your mark behind. As you do, the codex folds itself gently, as if exhaling. The scribe gives you a nod, not of farewell, but of approval. The moment you step out, you're greeted by torchlight and more glyph-covered walls. You're in a palace now, or maybe a school. Young students line the hallway, each with a thin slab of stucco and a stylus. They scratch numbers into the soft surface, practicing place value, vertical notation, date conversion. One child beckons you over. She points proudly at her work. A towering number with 3 levels, dot, bar, shell. You nod. 20. She beams. Then she draws something extra. A tiny turtle beside her math. You frown slightly, but she explains in a whisper, turtles were symbols of time. The gods of the calendar were often shown emerging from turtle shells. Of course, because even divine math needs a mascot. You realize with a jolt that you're smiling, like a real smile. Because somewhere between the codices and the counting stones, this stopped feeling like a history lesson and started feeling like a lullaby. The hallway fades, the turtle glyph girl waves goodbye, and before you know it, your feet find packed earth again. You're walking down a jungle path lit by fireflies, their glow pulsing like the bars and dots still flickering behind your eyes. With each step, the world seems to hum with arithmetic. Somewhere, a cicada chirps in perfect multiples of 5. The canopy opens suddenly, revealing a clearing, and there, in the moonlight, stands something that looks like a giant stone scoreboard. Rows upon rows of glyphs, interspersed with, yep, your old friends, dots, bars, and shells. But this isn't a calendar or a codex. It's a scoreboard for ball games. You heard that right. The Maya, mathematical masters and time whisperers, were also massive sports fans, and not just casual hobbyists. These ball games, called pits, were sacred events, cosmic metaphors wrapped in sweat, rubber, and drama. The field is long and narrow, with steep stone walls sloping in on either side. Picture a giant alleyway, like if a bowling lane and a Roman arena had a mystical baby. At the top of each wall, stone hoops. Yes, actual stone rings. The goal? Get a heavy rubber ball through the hoop without using your hands, or feet, or really any part of you that screams, "Please don't slam a 9-pound ball into me at full speed." You hear the crowd before you see them, chanting, clapping, stamping their feet in patterns that feel suspiciously rhythmic. Like maybe they're counting in base 20, or maybe it's just your sleepy brain finding math in everything now. Two teams appear, dressed in padded gear and feathers. This isn't just about points, it's about prophecy. The captains stare each. Other down and behind them, high on a viewing platform, the priests are already taking notes. You peer over their shoulders, and of course, they're marking the day's date in long count form, tracking the lunar phase, and adding up ritual totals. Every goal, every rebound, every bounce of the ball becomes part of a divine equation. A ritual math-off disguised as sweaty sport. The game isn't just entertainment, it's alignment. The players are reenacting cosmic battles. Every move echoes some long-forgotten myth. Every score resets a spiritual clock. And the scoreboard? It's covered in numbers. Not in Roman numerals or modern digits, but in Mayan notation. Neat stacks of dots and bars recording victories, penalties, lunar cycles, and player stats. You lean in and recognize a pattern, multiples of 13, a sacred number in the Mayan system. 13 heavens, 13 gods of the upper world, 13 joints in a human body, if you count fingers, elbows, knees, and shoulders, which they absolutely did. One scholar once suggested that the score totals might have dictated more than just bragging rights. Maybe they determined feast days, or omens, or sacrifices. Yes, sacrifices. See, here's where things get awkward. The winning team sometimes got showered with gifts and glory. Other times, they got the honor, air quotes firmly in place, of being offered to the gods, which is the ancient equivalent of winning American Idol, and then immediately being escorted off stage by a grim-faced priest holding a jade blade. Historians still argue whether the ball game was mainly religious, political, or recreational. Some say it varied by city-state. Others argue that even the most fun games were always laced with divine consequence. But one thing's clear, the math was constant. You can't have sacred ritual without a ledger, and you can't track celestial sports drama without symbols. Cheer erupts as a player slams the ball off his hip and sends it flying. It barely misses the hoop. The crowd groans as the priests make another tick on their tablet. You catch a glimpse of the glyph they draw, 2 bars and 3 dots. 13. Of course, the ball skids across the field and stops at your feet. No one says a word. The entire stadium, players, priests, audience, turns to look at you. Uh-oh, you. Pick up the ball. It's heavier than expected, solid rubber, still warm from all the action. Without thinking, you underhand it toward the nearest player, and it goes right through the hoop. The crowd goes silent. Then they erupt. The priests scribble furiously. Somewhere, a turtle sighs in reverence. You've just accidentally fulfilled a prophecy from the Popol Vuh, or maybe triggered the next Baktun. Hard to say. One priest approaches, holding up a long stone tablet covered in numerals. He shows it to you solemnly. It reads 13.0.0.1. You recognize the long count notation immediately. A new beginning, the first day of the next era. You try to say something witty, but instead, you just nod slowly. Nice. The priest blinks, then scribbles your name next, to the number. You don't have the heart to tell him you go by a screen name online. You're escorted off the field by a chanting crowd. They place a feathered cape over your shoulders and hand you what looks like a ceremonial churro. You take a bite. It's surprisingly good. Possibly cinnamon, possibly ash. Either way, it's growing on you. As you're paraded through the jungle, streets, you pass murals. Everywhere the dots and bars repeat. A scene of a king ascending the throne, 9 dots. A market scene, 3 bars, 2 dots. A depiction of the underworld, 7 shells in a row. You start to read the city like a spreadsheet of myth. One child points to your cape and says something about the reborn scorekeeper. You nod. Sure. Why not? You've earned your place among the numerals now. Not because you understand all the rules, but because you respect the game and the math behind it. The cape flutters off your shoulders as the jungle darkens again. The warmth of the crowd replaced by a cooler stillness. You walk alone now. The path before you lit not by torches but by stars. So many stars. You wonder if someone dumped glitter across the sky with careless joy. Then you remember, the Maya weren't just mathematicians. They were obsessed with astronomy. And not the casual, what's your sign kind. No, we're talking full-blown celestial charting, planet stalking, lunar phase mapping devotion. Every twinkle above you once had a name, a purpose, a spot, on a calendar and a say in royal decisions. You lie down in the soft moss and look up. The stars swirl slowly, and your eyes are drawn to a dark, gaping rift stretching across the Milky Way. It's not empty, it's full of meaning. The Maya called it the Black Road, or Xibalba B, the path to the underworld. A cosmic mouth. A sacred threshold. Historians still argue whether the Maya saw it as purely spiritual, or whether it also acted as a practical tool, like a celestial landmark for seasonal tracking. Either way, they were among the most precise ancient observers of the sky. You close your eyes and listen. In the distance, you hear a low hum, rhythmic, steady. It's the sound of an ancient observatory breathing through time. When you open them, you're no longer in the jungle. You're standing atop a massive stone platform, surrounded by cylindrical towers and rectangular windows carved into limestone. The walls rise around you, dotted with tiny viewing slits. You're inside El Caracol, the Eye Snail, an astronomical observatory at Chichen Itza. You don't need a guide to know what this building is about. Everything points up. Every corridor, every opening aligns with something celestial. The summer solstice, the setting Venus, the full moon in a particular phase that only shows up every 8 years. And that's the kicker. The Maya tracked Venus, the morning star, with such intensity that it became a cornerstone of their calendrical and religious systems. They mapped its movements in a 584-day cycle, recording each appearance and disappearance with care. To them, Venus wasn't just a bright thing in the sky. It was a war omen, a deity's eye, a divine clock hand ticking across eternity. Inside El Caracol, a priest stands near a narrow window, holding a rod and a bark paper scroll. You inch closer, and he gently tilts the rod through the window slit. Outside, the horizon burns faintly with dawn. A single star gleams. Venus. The priest marks the moment. Behind him, another scribe writes down numbers, not in decimal digits, of course, but in our beloved dots and bars. The sequence he writes corresponds exactly with the 584-day cycle. Every 5 Venus cycles, he notes, align almost perfectly with 8 solar years. And that's not just coincidence, it's math sorcery. You feel a small thrill. These guys weren't just watching the sky, they were solving celestial algebra problems, with no telescopes, no software, just observation, memory, and a fanatical commitment to never, ever missing a beat. The priest catches your gaze and smiles. He motions you forward and opens the scroll. It's filled with numbers, predictions, eclipses, ominous glyphs of gods with bleeding eyes and flayed skin. You know, casual astronomy. He shows you how they recorded eclipses centuries in advance. Not by magic, but by cyclical math. Patterns, recurrences. They even knew which eclipses would be visible in which cities. You blink, realizing that you've never felt less confident about your own ability to check a weather app. But here's the weird part. The Maya didn't see astronomy and math as separate fields. They were part of one cosmic equation. Numbers were sacred because the sky was sacred. Observing the heavens was worship. And numbers were just the language of the gods. Some of their calculations remain mind-blowingly precise. Like the lunar synodic cycle, which modern science measures at about 29,306 days. The Maya had it recorded at 29,308. A difference so small, you could blink and miss it, like the time it takes to lose your remote in the couch cushions. And they didn't just count days, they named them. Every day had a character, a destiny, a mood. Your birthday wasn't just a date, it was a sentence. Born on 6 Khan in the Trecena of Ix. Translation: Today, you're ruled by the serpent, and your life will be spicy and possibly full of mid-level intrigue. You lie back down on the cold stone floor of the observatory. The roof has openings, portals really, carved to frame certain constellations. As the night sky shifts, a star slowly drifts into view. The priest watches it. You watch him. And somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds. Not the sea kind, the ritual trumpet kind. Another observation logged. Another piece of the cosmic puzzle noted. You think back to modern life, to your phone buzzing with calendar alerts, your smartwatch nagging you to stand, your digital assistants reminding you it's National Donut Day. And you realize we still track time obsessively. We just don't treat it as sacred anymore. To the Maya, time wasn't something to fill, it was something to honor. A breeze moves through El Caracol, whispering through the stone corridors like the breath of some starry serpent. You follow it outside, back onto the high platform, where the stars have shifted again. A constellation shaped vaguely like a rabbit catches your eye. You remember reading somewhere that the Maya saw a rabbit in the moon, not a man. That tracks. The rabbit is a lunar symbol in many cultures. But here, it means something soft, cyclical, fertile. The moon, like numbers, always returns, always begins again. You sit quietly, watching it rise. The numbers echo behind your eyes like a heartbeat. Dots and bars, shells and stars, stacked neatly in your mind like a celestial spreadsheet. The priest speaks one last time, his voice low. If you know the sky, you know the gods. If you know the gods, you know yourself. Okay, you're not saying you'll become an astrologer or anything, but maybe you'll look up more, count more, notice the patterns, keep your own scroll, even if it's just a sleep tracker on your phone, because maybe, just maybe, you're one shell away from a whole new cycle. The stars fade, not all at once, but slowly, as if they're reluctant to go, pulling a celestial blanket away from your eyes. You blink, and daylight leaks in. You're no longer perched on the observatory's stone platform. Now, you're walking down a path between two massive stone walls, weathered but dignified, like the cheeks of a very old librarian who's seen some things. Ahead, the jungle opens onto what looks like an architectural wonderland. But not the kind with selfie sticks and overpriced coffee. This place buzzes with silent calculation. You're standing before a complex of stepped pyramids, long ceremonial avenues, and open plazas. Welcome to Uxmal, or maybe Copan, or Palenque. It hardly matters. What ties them all together isn't the location, it's the blueprint. And that blueprint? Oh, it's math. Glorious, obsessive, deeply intentional math. At first glance, the buildings feel like random piles of stone, but step closer, and you start to notice patterns. A staircase with exactly 91 steps, a temple with 18 terraces, a plaza whose dimensions are in a perfect 5.8 ratio. And then it hits you. You're standing in a calculator made of limestone. The Maya didn't just use numbers for rituals and calendars. They embedded them into the very shape of their cities. Sacred architecture was their version of spreadsheet design, with a lot more birdsong and humidity. A priest in a feathered cape, not as cool as yours, sorry, walks beside you and points up at the temple of the inscriptions. His hand traces the stepped layers like a slide rule. Each tier corresponds to a level of heaven. There are 13, of course. You know the drill by now. And just below the surface, 9 steps down into the underworld, also mathematically precise. 13 heavens up, 9 levels of Xibalba down. A cosmological sandwich. You're the reluctant pickle in the middle. Historians still debate how deliberate the alignment of each structure was. Were temples placed by astronomical calculations? Did certain staircases align with equinox shadows, or is that just the sun showing off? Some say yes, others say we might be projecting modern obsessions onto ancient blueprints. Still, the patterns are hard to ignore. Take the famous pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. 4 staircases, each with 91 steps. Add the top platform, bam, 365 steps. That's right, 1 for every day of the solar year. Coincidence? Not likely. The Maya loved a good hidden number like we love Easter eggs in Marvel movies. You walk along a colonnade feeling the shade flicker as beams of sunlight fall at perfectly spaced intervals. You count them, 20 columns, not by chance. And now, you're thinking about the vigesimal system again, their base 20 structure. That number crops up everywhere, 20 fingers and toes, 20-day months, 20 stone rows. You step into a side chamber. It's cool, quiet, filled with glyphs and, strangely, a carved stone turtle. You're starting to get the impression that turtles were the ancient equivalent of sticky notes, always nearby, always saying something useful, and occasionally hiding entire number systems on their shells. The walls in this chamber are carved with numbers again. Long count dates, tribute tallies, building dedications. One inscription reads, "Built in the 9th Khatun on the day of 6 Khan." A little math quiz embedded in the architecture, just in case some future traveler like you wandered in and decided to try decoding it. You take a seat on a stone bench and look around. Every element here serves a purpose. The roof vault angles in a golden ratio. The floor's length is a multiple of 13. Even the doorway's width corresponds with the moon's diameter in Mayan units. And don't even get started on acoustics. One clap from your hands, and the echo comes back sounding like a Quetzal bird, a feat of ancient audio engineering so precise it could rival your phone's noise-canceling earbuds. You try it, naturally. Clap, echo, bird song, nice. The priest nods approvingly. He hands you a small scroll, rolled tight and sealed with a waxy glyph. You open it. It's a floor plan of your dreams, every hallway marked with ratios. Every room sized in multiples of sacred numbers. There's even a nook labeled Ritual Snack Area, which frankly seems like a fantastic addition to any modern apartment. As you study it, the floor beneath you begins to tremble, not with fear, but with rhythm. You realize that this entire building is subtly vibrating, as if syncing to some planetary frequency. The Maya believed certain dates, numbers, and alignments could tune a structure like an instrument. You're not saying your living room needs retuning, but it's hard not to feel just a tiny bit envious. Suddenly, the air shifts. You're no longer sitting inside the chamber. You're high above the city now, floating, not flying, just drifting, like a glider made of time. From here, the city layout stretches beneath you like a motherboard. Temples are processors, courtyards are circuit paths, the roads connect like data lines. It's all so designed, and somehow it feels alive. You remember a line from earlier. If you know the sky, you know the gods. If you know the gods, you know yourself. Maybe the Maya built cities not just to live in, but to understand themselves. A civilization-sized mirror, made of rock and ratio. You float gently downward again, landing softly at the edge of a platform. The stone beneath your feet is warm from the sun. A bird cries overhead. Below, a group of children runs through the plaza, laughing, counting their steps out loud. Uno, dos, tres. 13 again. You smile. You get it now. The Maya didn't just build with numbers. They lived with them, in them, through them. Every wall, every step, every feathered headdress is part of the equation. And you? You're part of it now too. Your feet brush against soft dust as you wander away from the city's mathematical heartbeat. For a moment, everything grows quieter. No clapping echoes, no chattering priests, not even the rustle of the jungle. Just the sound of your own breath, slow and steady, syncing somehow with the rhythm of ancient numbers still humming in the stone. But don't get too comfy. Because now, we're going underground. That's right. Beneath the grand plazas and stepped pyramids, a whole other world lurks, darker, wetter, and wildly more symbolic. Welcome to the sacred world of cenotes and caves, where math doesn't stop at the surface. Oh no, The Maya even measured the underworld. You step cautiously into a narrow tunnel. The stone is slick, and the air smells like wet leaves and old secrets. Your torchlight flickers across walls etched with swirling patterns, spirals, numbers, celestial glyphs, and bones. Okay, that part's a little less cozy. This is a sacred cave, one of thousands across the Yucatan. To the Maya, these weren't just cool hideouts or natural oddities. They were portals, entrances to Xibalba, the 9-layered underworld ruled by gods with names that sound like rejected metal bands: Skull Scepter, Bloody Claws, Flying Scab. But here's the twist. They didn't just mythologize these caves. They measured them. Carefully. Deliberately. The layout of ceremonial caves often mirrors the cosmic order. 9 chambers or rooms representing the 9 levels of the underworld, each progressively deeper and darker. You pass through the first now, barely a depression in the ground, more symbolic than spooky. By the time you're in the third, you've got water dripping on your head, bats eyeing you like you owe them rent, and a priest lighting incense with a calm that suggests he's done this 100 times. Probably has. He gestures to a small platform, carved with 3 dots and 2 bars. You know what that means. 7, the 7th chamber, a sacred number in many Mesoamerican traditions. And here it marks a turning point. A bowl of jade beads sits at the platform's edge. The priest takes one, drops it into the darkness below, and listens. Plop. He counts the seconds. Then, very seriously, writes down the number. Historians still argue whether this was a timing ritual, an early form of sonar, or just a very intense version of skipping stones. Whatever the case, it shows something deeper, a fusion of myth and math. Measurement is devotion. You descend another chamber. It narrows now, forcing you to crouch. Symbols crowd the walls, numbers again, interspersed with jaguars and fire serpents. One depicts a full calendar round, 52 years marked by an endless knot of loops and bars. Remember, 52 years was a big deal. That's when the Hab and Zolkin calendars realigned, a kind of cosmic new game plus moment. The Maya celebrated it with fire, sometimes sacrifice, definitely math. You enter the 9th chamber, the air now cold and heavy. A central altar glows faintly with a torchlight, illuminating a complex carving. A long count date so ancient, it looks like it was written for the stars themselves. Some scholars believe these caves were chosen because of their geometry. The angles, acoustics, even humidity, measured, considered, and interlaced with rituals. Others argue that the math came later, superimposed by priests who were basically ancient interior designers with a flair for divination. The cave opens slightly here, forming a circular space. You stand at the center, and your voice echoes with perfect clarity. You test it. Shell. 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 A satisfying moment. Then a murmur from the shadows. Someone's chanting. Not a warning. Just a prayer. A sequence of numbers. 20. 413. Tones rise and fall like a lullaby from a calculator. And just like that, you're reminded. The Maya weren't afraid of darkness. They entered it, charted it, named it. Their underworld wasn't a punishment. It was a place to understand the self, the stars, and the very structure of existence. You sit at the altar and run your hands over the etched numbers. Each bar and dot is smooth from centuries of contact. The shell symbol is deep, its spiral catching the torchlight just right. It's empty, but it holds meaning. Think of it, the zero, born from a shell hiding underground. The concept of nothing, discovered in a place filled with so much something, ritual, belief, fear, wonder. One fringe theory even suggests that the idea of zero originated in these dark places. The absence of light, the void between echoes, the pause between beats of a prayer. It's poetic, a little dramatic, but not impossible. Eventually, the priest leads you back through the chambers. You count each one again, backwards this time. 9, 8, 7. Each chamber feels lighter, like the math is lifting you, one number at a time. At the cave's mouth, morning has fully arrived. Birds chatter. A monkey screeches like it just lost at Mario Kart. You squint into the light, surprised at how different the world feels now. Above. Temples gleam under the sun. You can see the stepped shapes more clearly, each edge calculated, each shadow falling just right. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that the caves held just as much wisdom, maybe more. Because where else but the underworld would the Maya bury their most sacred numbers? You walk a little taller as you step away from the cave. There's mud on your sandals, yes, but also clarity in your mind, a rhythm in your step. Numbers echo with new depth now. Each dot and bar, each shell and spiral. They're not just characters, they're keys to worlds above and below. You're walking again, barefoot now, not by choice but by some dreamlike logic that says shoes are overrated. The ground feels warm and oddly textured beneath your feet, like stepping on a sun-baked turtle's back. You look down, and there it is. A path made entirely of glyphs. Thousands of tiny, intricate Mayan symbols stretch in front of you like a stone comic strip, except way more serious and with fewer sound effects. Dots, bars, jaguars, masks, twisted faces, curled hands. And of course our friend the humble shell, sitting at intervals like a quiet punchline. The glyphs aren't just decoration. They mean something. In fact, you're standing on the Maya's greatest intellectual achievement besides their number system, their writing system. Hieroglyphs so dense, so layered with sound, meaning, metaphor, and time, that even modern linguists still wake up at night muttering things like, was it Katoon or Katoon? You kneel and touch a symbol. 3 dots over a bar. You already know. That's 4. But beside it, a glyph shaped like a twisted serpent eating a foot. That one's less obvious. Maybe ritual, maybe war, maybe Tuesdays are cursed. Maya script was context dependent. One symbol could change meaning depending on who it hung out with. You walk forward, eyes scanning. The symbols begin to lift off the ground, swirling around you like mathematical fireflies. You're floating in a tunnel made of language, numbers, and history, and right there, on a glowing wall of air, you see it, the long count. It stretches like a number line from the beginning of time to the end of, well, one cycle of it. The Maya weren't into forever. They liked their endings neat, poetic, and numbered. Start date? August 11th, 3114 BCE, probably not circled on your calendar. End of the cycle, December 21st, 2012. Remember that. The world didn't end, but a lot of people bought survival kits just in case. But here's the cool part. Each of those dates, they're full-blown equations, written in base 20, with place values stacked vertically. And they always end with that beautiful shell, 0. You pause at one of the massive glyphs, its curves glowing faintly in amber light. It's a name glyph, for a king who ruled during the 13th Khatun. Next to it, a calendrical combination, 4 Ahau 8 Kumku. Historians still debate exactly what that means. Was it an inauguration day, an eclipse warning, a good day to get married, or maybe just Taco Tuesday, ancient edition? Some of these glyphs are phonetic, others are logograms, whole words in a single image, and some, like the number glyphs, are visual math, counting systems disguised as art. You drift sideways now, toward a codex. Not an actual one, you'd never get your hands on the real thing, but a dream version, glowing with ink and spirit. It flips open for you, its pages covered in tightly packed glyphs. You recognize the familiar dot and bar clusters, but in between them, drawings of gods dancing on jaguars, priests holding obsidian knives, and one guy clearly inventing yoga by accident. The Dresden Codex, the Madrid Codex, the Paris Codex, 3 of the 4 known Mayan books that survived the fire-loving enthusiasm of colonial priests. Each is part astronomy guide, part calendar, part horoscope, part fever dream. Reading one is like trying to decode a fortune cookie written by Neil deGrasse. Tyson and a shaman in a canoe. One page catches your eye, a Venus table. It charts the appearance of the morning star, when it rises, when it disappears, when it might accidentally end civilization if you don't do the proper ritual. And guess what? The intervals are perfect. Days, Khatuns, Bakhtuns, all laid out. With a precision that puts your phone's moon phase app to shame. Some fringe theorists insist the Maya had help. Aliens, time travelers, sentient parrots. But the more you see, the more it's clear. They just cared about time, deeply, obsessively. They weren't predicting doom. They were describing patterns, seasons, cycles, the heartbeat of the cosmos, and they embedded it all in their writing. Their numbers and words weren't separate. They danced together. Every bar and dot had a sound, a story, a moment in history attached. You glance up, and suddenly, the glyphs are back on the ground. You're walking a ceremonial path again, this time toward a stela, a tall, carved stone monument. It towers. Above you, covered in glyphs and numbers, this one tells the life story of a ruler, birth date, ascension, war victories, ball game scores, probably. And it ends with a prophecy, some future alignment of planets and gods. The carving ends in a shell. 0 again, the end of a cycle, or maybe the beginning of one. The Maya weren't big fans of linear time. To them, everything looped. And that's when you realize something. This whole journey, it's a glyph, a metaphor, a giant spiral of dots and bars leading you inward, not just through Mayan cities and math, but through the very idea of how humans try to understand the universe. We count. We carve. We pray in numbers. A breeze picks up. The glyphs scatter like golden leaves. You're back in the jungle, but it's quieter now. The temples behind you, the caves below you, The sky above. Everywhere you look, you see the same thing, meaning in the shape of math. The jungle hums as you move through it again, your senses sharpened from all the numbers and glyphs still ricocheting around your sleepy brain. But tonight's not done with you yet, not by a long shot. Because just ahead, half shrouded in vines and bathed in moonlight, you spot something different. It's not a pyramid or a cave. It's a ball court. Yeah, a sports arena. But don't expect nachos. This is the ancient Mayan ball game, pock to pock if you want to sound cool at parties, and it's part brutal athleticism, part cosmic ritual, part mathematical marvel. And somehow, even here, even in a place designed for yelling and sweat and bouncing things off stone walls, the math still shows up. You step into the court. It's massive. Longer than a football field, flanked by towering walls and stone hoops high above your head. Try not to pull a hamstring just looking at them. The court is symmetrical. Beautifully, eerily so. Every angle measured, every stone placed just right to produce acoustics that could bounce a clap around like a ghost in a racquetball court. Seriously, try it. One clap here could echo 7 times. Take that, Madison Square Garden. And this symmetry? Not an accident. It mirrors the order of the cosmos, the balance between life and death, day and night, number and spirit. One side always represents life, the heavens. The other, death, the underworld. And in the center, you guessed it, humans, stuck playing the most intense volleyball game ever invented. You sit down on one of the court's worn steps and try to imagine it. A game played with a heavy rubber ball, no hands allowed, hips only. The players wear protective gear made from leather, bark, and maybe a hint of existential dread. The stakes? Oh, just the fate of the universe. Historians still argue whether the losing team was sacrificed, the captain only, or if the whole game was more ceremonial than lethal. Whatever the truth, one thing's clear. This was not your average pickup game. But where's the math? Look closer. The ball itself represents the sun. The path it takes, bouncing from one side to the other, soaring toward the hoop, falling, back, mirrors celestial movement. Some courts are even aligned with solar events. Like, the court is a calendar. You could practically schedule an eclipse between corner kicks. The layout reflects the sacred numbers, too. 13 and 20 show up constantly. Steps, panels, decorative elements. One court has 13 markers along one side and 20 along the other, like a gigantic spreadsheet built by someone with a deep spiritual investment in symmetry. Players move in patterns, ritualized motion, geometric flow. If you were to track their movement over time, you'd get spirals, arcs, mirrored trajectories. One archaeologist called it geometry in motion. Another just said, "My knees hurt watching this." And then there are the ball game glyphs. Yes, even here the Maya couldn't resist a good visual pun. Some glyphs show players in mid-action, but others depict symbolic numbers embedded in the scene, like a snake coiled into a spiral with exactly 13 loops, or a jaguar with 20 spots. There's one scene in a codex that shows a god playing ball with a decapitated head. Another shows the score as 3 bars and a dot. 4 points. What exactly those points mean? Historians are still puzzling it out. But hey, even modern sports have rules nobody understands. Looking at you, cricket. You stand again and walk to the center of the court. The stone beneath your feet feels different here, smoother, almost polished by time and movement. This is the axis mundi, the center of the world, at least according to Mayan cosmology. From this point, the gods watch. Time spins, and somewhere a giant cosmic scoreboard updates. A priest enters from the far side. He's older, calm, his robe painted with dots and shells. He nods at you, tosses something underhand. You catch it, barely. It's a miniature ball made of dried rubber and painted in glyphs. 1 shell, 1 bar, 1 dot. That's 6. The priest points up at the stone hoop. You won't make the shot. You know it. But you try anyway. The ball arcs beautifully. For a moment, time seems to pause. The stars lean in. You miss. By a lot. The priest shrugs and smiles, like this is very on brand. For you, he gestures for you to keep it. A consolation prize, or maybe a reminder. Even math has its bad days. As you walk out of the court, the jungle wraps around you again. But you carry something new now. Not just a ball, but an understanding. The Maya didn't just do math in temples and codices. They lived it. They played it. Their games were calendars. Their steps were calculations. Their sweat formed equations. And somewhere, deep down, you realize, if there's math in a ball game, then there's math in everything. Even your daily life. Those calendar reminders, grocery receipts, steps tracked on your phone. You're playing your version of Pock to Pock every day, just with less rubber and fewer crocodile masks. You chuckle softly. And ahead, through a break in the trees, you spot the next mystery waiting to be solved. Your path now tilts upward, the forest thinning until the sky above becomes a glimmering dome of stars. So close it feels like you could reach up and pluck one like a sleepy fruit. You pause because something strange is happening. The stars are moving. Not fast. No fireballs or comet chases. But slowly, purposefully, like dancers in a ceremony so ancient it predates language. You realize, after a moment of quiet awe, that you're watching a recreation of the Maya night sky. Not just a pretty screensaver, but a precision-engineered star map down to the last flickering speck of light. You lie back on a flat stone platform, the roof of an old observatory maybe. It's smooth and cool against your back, a reminder that the Maya didn't just gaze upward for fun. They measured, they timed, they calculated. You're not sure if it's sleep or magic, but your vision zooms in on a bright dot. Venus. This planet wasn't just another shiny thing for the Maya. It was the celestial VIP. Called Chak-Ek in their language, Venus was tracked obsessively. Its cycles, rising, setting, disappearing, were so accurate in Maya records, modern astronomers use them to confirm ancient planetary motion. Let that sink in. These people, with no telescopes and a shell-based zero, were better at Venus tracking than Europe was, well into the Middle Ages. You float upward, following Venus across the dream sky. The Maya knew its synodic period, the time it takes to return to the same place in the sky, was about 584 days. They baked that number into codices, carvings, even ball game symbolism. One Venus cycle could start wars, crown kings, or demand rituals. Historians still argue whether this celestial precision was scientific in the modern sense, or religious in intent. Did they know Venus was a planet? Or was it a god with a strict calendar? Maybe both. In Maya logic, science and belief didn't compete. They tangoed. As Venus slips out of sight, another pattern emerges. The moon. You watch it wax and whine, its cycle encoded into 29-day units in lunar glyphs. One codex even predicts lunar eclipses with eerie precision, complete with illustrations of moon serpents devouring light. You blink. The stars rearrange again, this time forming constellations, though not the Greek ones you're used to. No Orion, no Big Dipper. Instead, the Maya saw animals, gods, and stories stitched into the fabric of night. A crocodile here, a turtle there. Some scholars suggest the Milky Way represented the world tree, the axis connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld. And yes, the stars themselves. Counted, catalogued. Their motions charted on stone and bark, woven into rituals, sacrifices, and royal agendas. There's even evidence the Maya timed temple construction with celestial events, aligning buildings to equinox sunrises or solstices. Some pyramid staircases act like solar calendars, casting perfect serpent-shaped shadows just twice a year. Try doing that with your IKEA toolkit. You drift lower, into an ancient city once again. It's night, but the place is alive with flickering torchlight. You wander into a small room, part observatory, part shrine. In the center, a hole in the roof points directly at the night sky. It's aligned naturally to a specific constellation that appears only during a certain season. A priest kneels nearby, whispering numbers under his breath. You recognize them: 260, 365, 584. These were the big three. The Tzolk'in, the sacred calendar of 260 days, the Hab, the solar calendar of 365 days, and Venus's 584-day cycle. And guess what? Every 18,980 days they all align. That's 52 Hab years, a complete calendar round, a moment so significant the Maya would extinguish every fire in the city and relight them all from a sacred flame. Think of it as a celestial reset button, with fireworks and ominous chanting. You run your fingers over a nearby stone. It's warm. On it, dots and bars spiral outward like a galaxy drawn by hand. The numbers work out perfectly, overlapping, like gears in a giant cosmic machine. Someone once said that math is the language of the universe. The Maya, they weren't just speaking it, they were singing in it. You rise, leaving the priest to his calculations. The city behind you fades as you walk once more into the jungle, stars dancing gently above your head. And somewhere, on the edges of your thoughts, the question lingers. What else did they know? There are temples not yet excavated, glyphs not yet translated, codices long since burned to ash. What ideas, what insights, what perfect calculations have been lost to time? Fringe theorists will tell you the Maya had knowledge from Atlantis, that they built stargates, that they predicted every solar flare from here to eternity. The truth is quieter, but no less mind-blowing. They looked at the sky, they watched, they counted, for centuries, and they left behind patterns so precise that even with supercomputers and satellites, we're still catching up. You smile. Not because you know the answer, but because you know the question is worth asking. The jungle path shifts again, more stone now, less root and dirt. You step onto a raised platform of cracked limestone, flanked by carvings that shimmer faintly in moonlight. You've wandered into another city, quieter than the last, yet somehow more ceremonial. At its heart stands a building that feels different. Not the tallest, not the most elaborate, but somehow the most mysterious. You're drawn in, like it knows something you don't. Inside, the walls are covered in glyphs, hundreds, maybe thousands, some tiny and neat, others sprawling and dramatic. You run your fingers over a series shaped like coils and jaguars. There are dots and bars everywhere, of course, always with the dots and bars. But here they're dancing, layered with symbols of fire, maize, blood, and time. You're not just in a building. You're inside a codex. This, you realize, is a script hall, a place where Maya scribes worked, wrote, and stored knowledge. It's dusty, a little crumbled, but still humming with meaning. The air is heavy with ink and secrets. One scribe once called himself a guardian of days. That's what these people were, chroniclers of time, mathematicians of meaning, and their codices, folding bark books painted with vibrant pigments, were among the most precious objects in the Maya. World today, only 4 survive. 4, everything else? Burned, stolen, lost to mold, conquest, and especially to one particularly flame-happy bishop named Diego de Landa. Real villain origin story energy there. Historians still argue whether the Maya codices were widespread educational tools or elite-only spiritual texts. Some believe every city had them. Others think just a few scribes knew how to read them at all. Either way, what remains is enough to bend your brain sideways. You find a replica of one of these codices lying open. The Dresden Codex, maybe. Or Madrid. Its pages unfold accordion style, revealing layer upon layer of dates, gods, cycles, and warnings. This isn't bedtime reading. It's a matrix of spiritual calculus. Here's a page that predicts eclipses, accurate to within a day. Another maps Venus's journey, complete with ritual instructions depending on whether the planet is rising or descending. On day 94 of Venus's inferior conjunction, sacrifice a spotted dog. You know, normal Tuesday stuff. One section lists what crops to plant on what dates based on lunar phases and solar angles, like a farmer's almanac crossed with a book of spells, and through it all, numbers, dots and bars, shells, multiples of 13, 18, 20, big numbers, huge numbers. One page casually throws out a calculation spanning millions of days into the past. For reference, the Gregorian calendar wasn't even a glimmer in anyone's eye at that point. One fringe scholar claims the Maya recorded a date, 90 million years ago. No joke. Was it myth, pure speculation, alien fan fiction, or did they just have really impressive spreadsheets? You sit in the scribe's corner. There's a stone palette stained with old ink, a hollow reed, bits of crushed cochineal beetle for red, indigo for blue, and soot for black. Everything here speaks of care, precision, and, oddly, a kind of joy. Like they loved doing this. It's not hard to believe. The scribes weren't just copyists. They were storytellers, scientists, prophets. Their job was to trap time on paper. Every glyph they painted had to be mathematically and spiritually perfect. A single dot out of place could shift a ritual date by years. One scribe even added a footnote apologizing for an earlier mistake. Oops, wrong moon phase. The gods were probably very confused. Rough translation, obviously. And just when you think the walls can't hold any more knowledge, you spot something odd in the corner. A sequence of glyphs with no obvious meaning. Dots and bars in odd pairings. Shells on top of jaguars. A feathered serpent next to what looks like a monkey doing math. It's not part of any known calendar, not a royal lineage, not a ritual list. It might be a joke, a doodle, or maybe a message. Historians still debate what many of these sequences mean. Some might be mnemonics, others are codes. A few could be stories lost to time, or possibly just one scribe going, "Watch this." It'll confuse archaeologists for centuries. As you step out of the hall, the breeze brushes past you, scattering dried petals and soft echoes of ink-stained fingers. And in that moment, you finally get it. To the Maya, math wasn't just for building things or scheduling eclipses. It was art. A sacred language. A lens to understand the gods, the cosmos, themselves. Even boredom had its place. A long, slow count date carved into stone was a meditative act, like counting sheep, or calculating the heat death of the universe, one dot at a time. You follow the path again, now more curious than ever. What else did they leave behind? What strange, beautiful math is still waiting to be read? And will you dream in dots and bars tonight? Your steps take you downward now, literally and metaphorically. The stone gives way to earth again, loose soil muffling your footfalls. You're heading into the underworld, or at least the Maya version of it, Xibalba. Not quite hell, not quite Hades. More like a cosmic DMV staffed by death gods with a flair for elaborate trickery. According to Maya myth, it was a sprawling realm beneath the earth, reached through caves, cenotes, and sometimes, if you were very unlucky, your own nightmares. And you? You're here to do some math. Don't worry, it's not punishment, it's a continuation. Because even here, deep in the dark belly of the earth, the Maya kept counting. You brush past a jagged wall and find yourself in a cavern, lit by glowing green reflections off pooled water. In the distance, faint chanting echoes, either priests or your own overactive imagination. You hope it's priests. You hope they brought snacks, and then you see it. Another series of glyphs, etched into cave stone. They twist downward in a spiral, leading into a pit. Each step carved with a date, a name, or a number. You realize this isn't just decoration. It's a timeline, specifically a long count. Now you've seen these before, stone stelae proudly displaying absurdly long calendar numbers. But this one goes backward, into the past, deep past, pre-human past. Some of the dates refer to mythological events, like the creation of the world. Others describe ancestral gods and cosmic battles between deities you've never heard of. The long count calendar is arguably the most misunderstood aspect of Maya timekeeping. It tracks days from a mythical starting point, August 11th, 3114 BCE, in the proleptic Gregorian calendar. Why that date? Historians still argue whether it was symbolic, astronomical, or tied to a specific sky alignment. Either way, it's the beginning of this world cycle. Not the universe, mind you, just this round of reality. Think of it as Earth 2.0 after beta testing. The system counts days in base 20 and base 18 units. It sounds random until you realize how cleanly it matches celestial cycles and ritual timeframes. A typical long count date includes 5 parts: Baktun, Katun, Tun, Weenal, and Kin. That's a unit of 144,000 days, 7,200 days, 360 days, 20 days, and 1 day, respectively. Yes, the Maya essentially had a cosmic Excel sheet where the smallest cell was one single day, and the largest spanned over 394 years. And when that big calendar cycle hit 13.0.0.0.0 on December 21, 2012. Well, you probably remember the apocalypse that never came. Ah yes, 2012. The year yoga studios and YouTube channels everywhere had feelings about the Maya, the truth. That date was simply the end of a 5,125-year cycle, like your car odometer flipping over. No explosions, no black holes, no sudden mass ascension. Though to be fair, someone did bring chips to their end-of-the-world party. So at least there was guacamole. You descend further into the timeline. Each step pulses with historical events. Some record real kings and battles. Others, cosmic events no human could witness. One glyph references the planting of the 3 hearthstones of creation, linked to the Orion constellation. Another describes a ball game between gods that determined the fate of worlds. And then you see the shell. Just one, embedded in the wall next to a bar and 4 dots. 0. Even here, deep in the subterranean quiet, 0 appears. A reminder that absence is something worth measuring. That even the dark counts. A lesser-known quirk. The Maya may have had multiple symbols for 0, depending on context. A shell for date counting. A clenched fist for divine force. Some texts even suggest they used completion as a conceptual 0, not nothingness. Historians still puzzle over this. Was it numerical? Philosophical? Did they view 0 as an ending or a pause? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe the Maya just enjoyed being mysterious. You rest on a smooth ledge and gaze into the darkness below. A final glyph glows faintly, a full calendar round carved next to an image of a jaguar swallowing the sun. It's a visual pun, the end and the beginning. And here's the wildest part. Even when they imagined the destruction of this world, the Maya didn't imagine finality. They imagined renewal. Time didn't stop. It reset. A new cycle, a fresh count, like flipping a cosmic hourglass. You sit quietly, letting the thoughts settle in your mind like sediment in still water. For the Maya, history wasn't a straight line. It was a loop, a spiral, a snake eating its own tail. But with a calendar reminder set for 394 years from now. In this darkness, with nothing but numbers and myth for company, you start to feel a kind of peace. Because what's more comforting than knowing the universe keeps time, even when you don't? The jungle above rustles gently. Somewhere in the night, a monkey howls. You think you hear laughter in its call. Maybe it's laughing at all of us, for thinking we invented time, for believing that counting only matters when it adds up to something. But the Maya knew better. They counted because it meant something, and maybe that's enough. Back above ground, the night air feels cooler now, as if the jungle itself has exhaled. You emerge from the underworld with dust on your shoulders and ancient numbers echoing softly in your head. The stars overhead burn sharp and white, the moon, now slightly lower, watching you like a quiet guardian. You don't know exactly how long you've been walking. Hours? Days? A few baktuns? But your path winds once more through the ruins. except now they feel familiar. You recognize the curves of the glyphs, the rhythm in the calendar stones, the gentle pulse of mathematical thought woven through vines and shadow. You step into one last plaza. It's wide and empty, save for a single monument. A stela standing, tall, cracked but proud. Unlike others, this one has no dramatic king carved into it, no war scene, no giant jaguar throne. Just a long count date, and a peculiar carving at its base, a single shell, 0, just sitting there, quiet, patient, almost smug, and above it, a series of dots and bars that read, loosely translated, from nothing, everything. It's fitting, isn't it? You think back across everything you've seen, the farmers who used math to predict rains, the scribes who wrote the stars, the priests with their calendar wheels, the builders, the ball players, the poets in disguise. You remember the 0 that was born from cornfields, the base 20 system that measured not just time but identity, and the great cosmic clocks ticking down to moments no one today will live to see. And now, here's one more mystery. Historians still argue whether this final stela is real or reconstructed, an artifact or an artist's homage. Some think it was moved here from another site. Others say it was a late addition, a quiet tribute by scribes at the end of their era. Whatever the truth, it hums with presence. The Maya worldview, at once cyclical, layered, and deeply numerical, can feel alien at first. But the longer you stay, the more it resonates. Because behind all the dots and bars, all the interlocking wheels and jaguar gods, lies something surprisingly human. They just wanted to understand where they stood, not just in time, but through time. To know how today connected to yesterday, and how tomorrow might echo forward from the shape of now. Even the quirks start to feel like cozy details. The obsession with Venus. Relatable. Who hasn't stared at a bright planet and wondered what it's thinking? The long count's massive numbers. Basically a flex. The 0 that looks like a shell. Pure aesthetic delight. And still as you look at the stone, you wonder, did they know their math would outlast them? That it would travel through fire, conquest, rot, and rain, only to be whispered about in podcasts and printed on the back of tourist t-shirts? Maybe. Or maybe they were just doing what humans do when they care deeply about something. They wrote it down. They counted. They carved a calendar into a wall and trusted that time like stone might remember. You lean against the monument, grounding yourself. Your hand brushes the shell again. Soft grooves, a simple shape that changed the world. The jungle is nearly silent now, as if holding its breath. You think of everything you learned tonight. The Maya didn't just have numbers, they had relationships with numbers. They saw them as living things, tools, yes, but also spirits, guides, keepers of cosmic rhythm. Each count, each cycle, had a soul. And through math, they could align themselves with the heartbeat of the universe. And now, you wonder, will you ever look at a number the same way again? Will you see a calendar and remember the long count? Will you look at a dot, just a dot, and imagine an entire civilization meditating on its power? As the sky starts to brighten, you walk one last time through the ruins, slowly now. Each step deliberate. There's no rush. Not here. Time isn't a treadmill. It's a slow river. Sometimes it curves back on itself. Sometimes it stops to admire a flower. Sometimes it counts in shells and dots. And as the birds begin their first tentative chirps, and the sun paints the edges of the horizon in quiet pink, you exhale. You made it through the history of Maya math. You probably won't survive a solar zenith or play ceremonial ball game with obsidian blades. But hey, at least now you know what a baktun is, and that's something. The world is soft now. The jungle fades into velvet silence, and the numbers, once vivid, dissolve gently into the haze behind your eyelids. You're floating, not walking, drifting over sacred stones and buried codices, past time-worn glyphs and empty plazas, where ancient voices once whispered calculations to the stars. The shell of zero rests at the center of it all, a small, perfect stillness that anchors everything. In your mind, it pulses quietly, not an absence, but a pause, a breath between moments, a space where sleep begins. You feel the cool earth below you, steady and slow. No rushing clocks, no blinking notifications. Just the slow, steady beat of celestial math, cycles within cycles, suns rising and resetting, moons waxing, waning, waiting. Let your thoughts quiet now. Let the weight of counting go. The Maya have kept time for you tonight, and now it's your turn to rest. Feel your chest rise and fall, like a tide against the edge of a calendar. You are
in the in-between now, nestled between cycles, safe in the pause between numbers. Everything is okay. You don't have to remember the dates.
just the feeling of them, soft as stone warmed by day, light as shell, still as zero. Now let it all fade. The jungle, the gods, the stele, the numbers, all counting backward into dream. You are here. You are resting. And time, for now, has paused just for you.